the cafeteria went silent. Every sailor, every officer, every new recruit froze mid-bite when the Rear Admiral, a man whose very presence commanded fear and respect, walked through the door. But what he did next shattered every expectation. He didn't look toward his high-ranking officers. He didn't head for the VIP table. Instead, his eyes locked onto an old janitor quietly sweeping in the corner, the same man everyone ignored every single day. And then, in a moment that made the air feel electric, the Admiral stopped, straightened his uniform, and saluted the janitor. The room fell into stunned silence. Forks clattered. A young ensign whispered, "Why is the Admiral saluting him?" No one knew. But what followed revealed a story buried beneath decades of service, sacrifice, and silence, a story that would change the base forever. For years, Arthur "Artie" Collins had walked those same gray halls of the naval base. Every morning at 5 a.m., he arrived before the sailors even rolled out of bed. He cleaned floors, fixed lights, unclogged drains, invisible work that made everything else function. Most days, he was just the janitor. The young recruits didn't even bother learning his name. They rushed past him, laughed near him, sometimes even left messes behind, knowing he'd clean them up without a word. But Arthur never complained. He smiled politely, nodded when spoken to, and kept sweeping. His eyes, though tired, carried a depth that no one noticed, eyes that had seen more than anyone in that building could imagine. Every so often, he'd pause by the memorial wall, names engraved in bronze, heroes lost at sea. His hand would hover over one name before quietly moving on, Lieutenant Commander Arthur Collins, Jr. It was his son. And no one knew. Arthur's story wasn't written in medals anymore. It was written in scars, both visible and silent. He'd been a chief petty officer once, decorated, respected, loved by his men. But after losing his son in a classified naval mission, Arthur retired early. The Navy offered him a pension and an empty home. Instead, he asked to serve quietly as a janitor on the same base his boy once walked. He didn't need rank anymore. He needed purpose. But purpose didn't protect him from loneliness. One day, as he cleaned the mess hall, a group of young sailors at the next table laughed. "Hey old man," one of them smirked, "you miss a spot." They tossed a crumpled napkin at his feet. Arthur bent down, picked it up calmly, and replied softly, "A sailor should never leave a mess he can't clean himself." They laughed louder. He didn't respond. He just smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides both pain and wisdom. That night, the base prepared for a special inspection. Word spread that Rear Admiral James Walker, a legend in the Navy, would visit the next morning. Everyone polished their shoes, ironed their uniforms, and whispered about what it would be like to meet him. But no one thought about Arthur. No one ever did. Until the Admiral arrived. The next morning, the base stood at perfect attention. Every officer was lined up, uniforms crisp, medals gleaming. Admiral Walker's car pulled in, and the entire base went quiet. He stepped out tall, stern, eyes sharp as ever. Every soldier snapped to salute. The Admiral walked down the line, inspecting the ranks. His expression didn't change until he reached the cafeteria. That's when he stopped. Because there, in the corner, with a broom in one hand and a mop bucket beside him, stood Arthur Collins. For a moment, the Admiral's face froze. His lips parted slightly, eyes widening with recognition. Then, to everyone's shock, he broke formation, marched straight across the room, and stopped in front of Arthur. Every officer looked at one another, confused. What was going on? The Admiral stood tall, took a deep breath, and in a voice that trembled slightly, said, "Chief Petty Officer Arthur Collins, sir." Then, in full view of everyone, the Admiral saluted him. The room went dead silent. Arthur's eyes filled with tears. He hadn't heard that title in decades. Slowly, shakily, he returned the salute. "Admiral Walker," he said quietly, "it's been a long time." The Admiral smiled faintly. "Too long, Chief. You trained me. You saved my life in the Gulf. Everything I am, this rank, this uniform, I owe it to you." Gasps filled the cafeteria. The same sailors who mocked Arthur looked at him with new eyes, realizing they'd spent months ignoring a legend. The Admiral turned to the others and said, "You all see a janitor. I see a warrior who served 30 years, who carried men through fire, who never asked for glory. He lost his son in the line of duty, and still came back to serve the same navy that took everything from him. That's not just duty. That's love." Arthur lowered his head, his hands trembling. For the first time in years, people didn't look past him, they looked at him. The Admiral placed a hand on his shoulder. "The Navy forgot to salute you, Chief. Today, we correct that." Everyone in the cafeteria, officers, sailors, cooks, stood and saluted. Arthur's eyes glistened as he whispered, "My boy would have liked this." The Admiral smiled softly. "He'd be proud, sir." And for the first time in a long, long while, the old janitor stood tall again. Military medal message and ending scene. That day, the story of Arthur Collins spread across the fleet. The Admiral's salute became a legend, a reminder that true rank isn't on your shoulder, it's in your heart. Arthur continued working as a janitor, but now, no one ignored him. Sailors greeted him every morning with respect, and when they passed the memorial wall, they didn't just see names anymore. They saw stories. And at the top of that wall, next to his son's name, a new plaque appeared. Arthur Collins, Chief Petty Officer, Mentor, Father, and the Heart of this Base.